So guys, in the previous lecture video, we discussed the implementation of the file master slave1.c, and now in this file, we will going to implement the thread cancellation. So after implementing the thread cancellation, I will going to rename this file as master slave1 async cancellation. So this particular file, that is async-cancellation.c, contains the solution. So now let us open this file and implement thread cancellation. So I hope you have already gone through this short file and have understood the structure and the purpose of this file, right? So let me split the screen into two parts. In the left hand side, we have a while one loop in which we interact with the user. And on the right hand side, we have a function which is a thread function, and all the slave threads are executing in this while one loop, right? Now you're already aware of this program functionality. So you can see that on the left hand side, as soon as the user chooses the choice number 1, we also ask the user about the thread ID, which corresponds to the thread which the user wishes to cancel, right? So it means that here I need to do something in order to cancel the thread whose ID is this variable, that is thread num, right? So POSIX API provides an API thread pthread cancel. And all you need to do is to simply pass the thread handle which you want to cancel, right? And that's it, right? So you can see that as soon as the pthread cancel is invoked, a cancel signal will be sent to the thread which is identified by this thread handle, right? But if you compile this program and run at this point of time, you would not see any effect of adding this line, right? The reason is that in order to cancel the thread should be cancelable in the first place, right? Cancelable threads are those threads which can be cancelled, right? By default, when you create a thread, they are not cancelable threads, right? And non-cancelable threads cannot be cancelled even if you invoke this pthread cancel API. So write into file function is a function which is executing in the context of a thread. And as soon as the thread executes, the very first thing that we need to do is to mark that thread as cancelable thread so that the effect of this API takes place on that thread. So in the thread function, all you need to do is that as soon as your thread starts executing its thread function, you need to specify whether the thread is cancelable or not, right? So for that, the POSIX standard gives us an API pthread underscore set cancel state, right? And here you need to pass a constant value which is defined in the POSIX header files. And you just have to pass pthread cancel enable, right? The other alternative to this value is pthread cancel disable, right? So if you want to mark the thread as cancelable, you have to pass this variable or this constant. And if you want to mark that thread as non-cancelable, then you need to pass pthread cancel disable, right? So during the course of execution, the thread at any point of time can invoke this API in order to change its behavior with respect to its cancelability. And the second argument you can always pass as null, that is not important at all. Then you also need to set the mode of cancellation. So we had learned that there are two modes of cancellation, the deferred cancellation and asynchronous cancellation. At this point of time, we are dealing with asynchronous cancellation. So you just have to specify pthread cancel asynchronous, right? And you need to do so by using an API pthread set cancel type, right? So in order to modify the cancelability property of a thread, you need to make use of these two APIs. The first API says whether your thread is cancelable or not. And the second API says that if your thread is cancelable, then in what mode is it cancelable? Is it asynchronous or deferred? We will shortly going to discuss the deferred mode of cancellation of the thread. So now the thread which is executing this function is now cancelable in the asynchronous mode. Another thing to be noted here is that these APIs do not take an argument, the thread handle, right? So it simply means that whichever thread invokes this API, the effect of this API takes place on that particular thread only, right? So it is not possible that one thread can mark the other thread as cancelable or non-cancelable, right? One thread in the process cannot change the cancelability behavior of other thread in the process, right? It would have been possible if these APIs have taken the thread handle as an argument, right? Because one thread can always pass the thread handle of other thread in order to perform operations on the other threads, but that is not the case here. So in future, if you see any POSIX API which do not accept the thread handle, it would simply means that the effect of that API would take place on the calling thread. So now let us compile and run our program and see how thread cancellation work. So guys, in order to show you demo, so let me execute our program in the first window, right? And of course the slave threads must have started executing. So let me display the content of the file thread0.txt, and you can see that the slave thread number 0 is writing into this file. Similarly, thread number 1 is writing in the third window and the thread number 2 is writing in the fourth window, right? So now let me cancel the thread and let us say that I choose the thread number 2. So it simply means that this thread number 2 has been cancelled, right? It has stopped writing its content into the file. And let me choose another thread. Let's say I want to cancel the thread number 1, right? So you can see that the thread number 1 is cancelled. And once the thread is cancelled, you just cannot resume that thread. There is no way. All you can do is to create a thread again from absolute scratch if you want to redo the work that your cancelled thread was doing.